We're partnering tonight with the Iowa Brown and Black Forum, the nation's oldest nonpartisan forum focused on minority issues. Since 1984, the forum has been a key stop on the campaign trail led by Wayne Ford and Mary Campos, two visionaries who, then and now, wanted to make a difference.
I truly believe that if me and Mary have not gotten together in 1984, no one would even be talking about minority issues. Why would the candidates talk about minority issues in the fifth whitest state in America?
I believe I first met Mr. Wayne Ford at one of the political meetings that we had. Wayne and I had several conversations about how every time that the parties were going to have their debates, we were never invited. So I told him, I think that that's not fair.
And I said, Mary, let's bring the black and brown community together to make a difference, to make sure minority people can have their voices heard. So we started that in 1984, and that was the first Brown and Black Presidential Forum for the state of Iowa.
I think that it's a very important time in our country's history because there are things that we have to bring to the forefront.
We're dealing with race, economic development, the immigration issues,
criminal justice, education, health care.
We want to make sure that black and brown kids get the same opportunities like anyone else.
We want justice for all, and we need to be treated equally. And at the end of my life's journey, I hope that I can say that I've turned around more than one life.
What I hope young people will get from this presidential forum is that they can see two individuals who have gray hair still making a difference.
I had the pleasure of meeting Wayne and Mary this morning, and a couple days ago I knew that I was moderating a forum, but now after talking to them, I really understood that I was part of a lineage, something that they built, something that they still care about, and something that I am proud to continue into the future. Now to the night's most important participant. We want you to join us in the discussion. On Twitter, we'll be using the hashtag DemForum, and be sure to download the This Is Fusion app, where we'll be asking you to weigh in on the candidates' answers.
A couple of things to take note of. This is a forum, not a debate. Each candidate will appear on stage solo, as mandated by the Democratic National Committee. We'll be pressing the candidates on the issues that matter most to an increasingly diverse America, including immigration, education, economic development, criminal justice, and health. We'll do our best to keep things moving, and we'll use our discretion for follow-ups along the way. Other than that, though, there are no rules. We've told the campaigns they should keep their answers to about a minute. If you have ever met a politician, you know that's unlikely. As for who goes first, we decided to go in reverse alphabetical order, and so with that, we'll take a short break. And when we come back here on Fusion Live from Des Moines, we begin with Senator Bernie Sanders.
5 things you didn't know about Bernie Sanders. Sanders is the oldest of all the candidates, Democratic or Republican, running for president. That means if he wins the White House, he'll be the oldest elected president in history. Bernie isn't the only one in his family who's into politics. His older brother Larry is a British politician who most recently ran for the British Parliament as a Green Party candidate. Sanders was reportedly a sloppy student in college. In fact, the dean asked him to take a year off. Did you know Sanders is a musician? Well, sort of. While serving as mayor of Burlington, Vermont, he released a folk album called We Shall Overcome. And if you're still not feeling the burn, if elected president, Bernie Sanders would be the first Jewish president in U.S. history. L'chaim!
Fusion's presentation of the Brown and Black Forum is connected by BlackBerry Priv.
So if you're watching on your laptop, if you're watching on your phone, Fusion is still live from Drake University here in Des Moines, Iowa. We're waiting for the three presidential Democratic contenders. I'm Mariana Atencio, joined by Nando Villa.
Pleasure to be here.
And the latest polls, Nando, indicate that the race is very tight here in Iowa. The latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll places Secretary Clinton at 48% here in Iowa versus 45% for Senator Sanders. Do you think this forum here tonight, the 7th Brown and Black Presidential Forum, has a chance to really be a game changer and set the tone in Iowa?
Well, I'm tempted to say that this forum is the most important event in the history of our democracy. So yes, it does have a chance to be a game changer. But seriously, Bernie Sanders is within the margin of error, 3% down from Hillary Clinton. The Democratic National Committee has been very careful about keeping all the debates on Saturday nights where they can't be seen by a lot of people. This one is on a Monday night, so we're hoping that it's seen by a lot of people, and that will be important for them.
And it's the first discussion in this 2016 presidential race, which has been very unpredictable. And we want you guys to join us throughout the discussion. Join us on Twitter using the hashtag DemForum. Also on Snapchat by clicking on Campaign 2016. Yep. We'll be with you live here for the digital show. And we also want to invite you to stay for our digital post show with me and Nando.
It's going to be wild, I promise you.
Now we're going to take it back to our moderators, and we're waiting, of course, for Senator Sanders to take the stage here at the 7th Brown and Black Presidential Forum from Des Moines.
Dear next president.
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 Dear next president, I would like for you to have affordable college tuition for the next generation and generations to come.
Dear next president, you should stop the pollution so we can breathe more.
I hope you don't put strict laws. I hope you make healthcare more efficient.
Please make it easier for immigrants to come to the U.S.
Dear next president, make the Mideast safer.
I wish school was free for everybody, not just athletes.
I hope you make better laws than the old ones.
If you are not like Obama, you are fired.
Dear next president, please make lunch food better.
You should provide better buildings for all the schools.
Dear next president, I hope that you are humble by the magnitude of what needs to be done, but yet not immobilized by the fear of past failure.
Welcome back to Fusion's Brown and Black Forum, live from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. The three Democratic candidates for president are with us tonight. Joining me on stage, my co-moderators, Rembert Brown, Aquila Hughes, and Jorge Ramos.
Thanks, Alicia. As a reminder, there are 5 topics that we agreed to discuss tonight: education, economic development, criminal justice, health, and immigration. And we hope you'll join us in that discussion throughout the evening. Now, please join me in welcoming our first candidate, Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
A little cold in Iowa, isn't it? A little cold here in Iowa.
For me, for Vermont, cold? No, not at all.
All right. So we have about half an hour with you. Thanks so much for being here with us. Right. And so let's start. Let's talk about guns. Do you own a gun?
No.
No, you don't. All right. Because I want to ask about guns. In 2005, you voted for a bill that shields gun manufacturers from lawsuits. And after that, Secretary Clinton said the following: maybe it's time for Senator Sanders to stand up and say, I got this one wrong. Did you make a mistake?
No, it was a long, like many pieces of legislation, like many of the 10,000 votes that I cast, bills are complicated. But let's be clear. When I ran for the United States Congress in 1988, I ran as an independent, taking on a Democrat and Republican. What the gun people said is, you can vote for the Democrat or Republican, don't vote for Bernie Sanders. You know why? Because I said that we should not be selling assault weapons in the United States of America. I lost that election by 3 percentage points. Throughout my political career, I have ended up with a D- voting record from the NRA. I have voted to improve and extend the instant background check. I voted against the gun show loophole. And I also believe that we should make this straw man situation a federal crime. And I believe that we need a revolution in mental health so that people who need mental treatment can get it now, not 2 years from now.
I understand, but in this case, did you make a mistake
No,
when
there
it
were
comes to
provisions
immunity
in that
to
bill.
gun makers?
There were provisions in that bill. For example, you are a small gun shop owner in the state of Vermont. You sell her a gun legally. She goes through the instant background check. Then she goes out later and shoots somebody. Should you be sued?
I don't know. You tell
I
me.
don't think so. On the other hand, if you are a gun manufacturer who is selling guns into an area and you're selling a whole lot of guns, and you have reason to believe that a lot of those guns are not meant for the people in that area, but are being distributed to criminal elements, should you be prosecuted? Damn right. So I think what we have to do is take a new look at that legislation and get rid of the provisions.
So you don't make a mistake in that?
It's not a mistake. Like many pieces of legislation, it is complicated. But on the issue of guns, let me be very clear. I support the president. I think we have got to expand and extend and improve the instant background check. We've got to do everything we can to end these horrific murders and mass murders that we're seeing in this country.
But as you know, Secretary Clinton has been criticizing you. Have you noticed lately that she's been getting more aggressive with you?
Yes.
Why is that?
I don't know. It could be.
You tell me.
It could be that the inevitable candidate for the Democratic nomination may not be so inevitable today. And I think if you look at the crowds that we are bringing forth here in Iowa, in New Hampshire, all over this country, the excitement they were generating, where millions of people are now saying, Jorge, that maybe it is time to go beyond establishment politics and establishment economics. Maybe it's time for a political revolution to take on the billionaire class and create an economy that works for all of us.
So can a socialist be the next president of the United States?
A democratic socialist certainly can and will be.
Aquila.
Thank you, Jorge. Senator, thank you for being here. I have a question about affirmative action. So you've been a supporter of affirmative action for a long time, but I want to know, how would you respond to a white student who believes that their access to education is being limited by affirmative action?
Well, how I would respond is saying that it's time not to play off white against black. It's to make sure that every kid in this country, regardless of income, can get a college education, which is why I am vigorously fighting to make sure that all public colleges and universities are tuition free. And I would say to that white kid that, you know what, you deserve an education, so does the black kid next to you, so does every kid in America. And in the richest country in the history of the world, we can do that, and we're going to pay for that, by the way, and including lowering student interest rates on student debt. You know, we're going to pay for that by a tax on Wall Street speculation. Every kid in this country has a right to a higher education.
Well, just as a follow-up, do you consider, or sorry, if the Supreme Court, this is, I think, more important, if the Supreme Court were to end affirmative action, what would you do to ensure that minority students have access to higher education?
Everything that I can. Look, it is no great secret that many of the public schools, elementary schools, high schools in this country in minority areas are just not working. Many of them are dropout factories. So we have got to do everything we can to make certain that all of our kids get a quality education and pay a special attention to those schools that are not doing well. Now, one of the things that I have always believed is that in terms of education, we have to break our dependency on the property tax. Because what happens is the wealthier suburbs can, in fact, have great schools, but the poor inner city schools cannot. So I think we need equality in terms of how we fund education and make sure the federal government plays an active role to make sure that those schools who need it the most get the funds that they deserve.
Thank you, Senator. Alicia?
Thanks, Akila. Senator, in light of the recent large-scale raids of immigrant families, you've called on President Obama to extend temporary protected status or safe haven to Central American immigrants. That allows individuals temporary status and work visas until they can return safely to their country of origin. You've said protected status should be administered on a case-by-case basis, but I'm curious, can you be more specific?
Sure. What that means is I think most of us know, in some cases, people who have been deported from this country back to Honduras or back to Guatemala end up getting killed because their communities are being run by drug cartels. So where we believe that people's life is in danger, obviously you got to protect those people. That's what I mean by a case-by-case status. We have a moral responsibility. What refugee status is about is to make sure that people are not forced to return to communities where their lives may be in danger.
So it's not blanket TPS for anyone who's come here from Central America. And then how would you actually decide those case by case? I mean, isn't the point of TPS?
Well, I won't, but you'll have people who will know the communities and will know the situations. And I think we've got to be pretty liberal about that. I worry especially about little children being forced to go back to communities where their lives will be miserable and they will be in danger.
I want to stay on the topic of immigration. In 2007, you voted against an immigration bill because of an increase in the guest worker program. In 2013, you said you had reservations about the Gang of Eight bill for very similar reasons. And all of that has won you praise from some unlikely allies. The president of Numbers USA, an organization that seeks to decrease immigration in this country. You have Congressman Steve King of Iowa. But here's my question. Yeah. Should immigration advocates be worried about the fact that they praise parts of your plan?
Who else opposed that piece of legislation? LULAC did, didn't they? Yes, they did. And some of the most progressive members of the United States Congress opposed it. Why? Because among other things, you had the Southern Poverty Law Center telling us that some of these guest worker programs were akin to slavery. In other words, you had people who were being terribly exploited, and if they stood up for their rights, they would be thrown out of the country. So when you have a major Latino organization opposing it and some of the leading progressives in Congress opposing it, I think it made sense to oppose it. But I did support the more recent legislation, immigration reform legislation. I happen to believe that we have got to move toward comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And as president, if Congress does not do what they should be doing, I will use the executive offices of the presidency.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Senator Sanders, the black unemployment rate remains at twice the rate of white unemployment.
Yes.
A problem that has existed since the March on Washington, which, as you know, was over 50 years ago. It's long been speculated why this is still true, and you can say who is at fault. Who do you think is at fault, and why do you think this reality is still true?
Well, it's a hugely important question. What you said is exactly right. So let's look at what's going on in the American economy today. What's been going on in the last 30 or 40 years? What you've seen is the disappearance of the American middle class. You've seen people working longer hours for low wages, and almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. So we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth, and more massive income and wealth inequality than any other country on earth. Now, in terms of unemployment, here's the truth. Official unemployment in this country is 5%. Real unemployment is 10%, counting those people who've given up looking for work. African-American youth unemployment in this country is 51% for high school graduates. That is a national disgrace. And what I have said, and repeat to you today, that instead of investing in jails and incarceration, I'm going to invest in education and jobs. Put the kids back to work.
So this is actually a follow-up to something Akila was asking about college, student loans. One, I understand when you say free college,
public colleges and universities tuition free.
Nothing sounds better than that. And I think when you hear, if I was someone that was deciding whether or not I wanted to go to college or university and I heard that, I would begin to do that. But it still sounds like such a far-fetched reality. Can you just explain a little bit more how this is ever going to happen?
You know, very often that point is that this is really far-fetched. Imagine in the wealthiest country in the history of the world that has massive income and wealth inequality, that we would say that all kids in this country have the right to go to a public college and a university tuition-free. And let me add to that. Maybe we should do what every other industrialized country also does and guarantee health care to all people as a right. How's that? Very far-fetched? I don't think it's far-fetched. Countries all over the world are already doing that. What countries understand that in a competitive global economy, you need the best educated workforce. We do not have the best educated workforce. So making certain that kids can get the education they need and not leave school deeply in debt is not only good for the young people, it is good for the future of this country. This is not a radical idea. You want to hear a radical idea? Here's a radical idea, that in the last 30 years, trillions of dollars have been redistributed from the middle class to the top 0.1%. That is a radical idea. Making public colleges and universities tuition-free is not a radical idea.
Senator, speaking of college students, we've got some students in the audience with questions. Here's Molly from Simpson College.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name's Molly Monk, and as she just said, I'm a senior at Simpson College. 37 states require that sex education include abstinence. Of these states, 25 require that abstinence be stressed more than any other form. And of these states, only 14 require that your sex education contain verifiable facts. More than half of American teenagers are sexually active, and we know that birth control is critical to preventing not only pregnancy, but HIV and STDs, which disproportionately affect youth. Will you end the federal funding that is being poured into these programs for these out-of-step ideas?
Well, let me start off by saying something very radical. You ready for something radical? I'm a United States Senator who believes in science and believes in facts. Now, I know that's a radical idea nowadays, but what the heck? So I think when we have too much unwanted pregnancy, I think that obviously women have the right to get the contraceptives that they need. When sexuality is an intrinsic part of human life, we should not run away from it. We should explain biology and sexuality to our kids on a factual basis, period.
All right, Jorge.
So you were talking about radical ideas. Can I ask you about one of those radical ideas? You want to break up the big banks in the United States?
I want to break up the big banks on Wall Street,
Can you give me some specifics? Are we talking about Bank of America? You would
Yes.
break.
Well, here's what we're talking about.
JP Morgan?
Yeah, but here's
Wells
what...
Fargo? Citigroup?
Keep going, you're doing good.
So those four big banks you want to break up?
Here's what we got. We bailed out Wall Street after their greed and recklessness destroyed this economy, correct? We bailed them out, and the reason, against my vote, that Congress bailed them out is banks were too big to fail, right? Well, guess what? 3 out of the 4 largest banks in this country today are bigger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. Top 6 financial institutions issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages. Meanwhile, when you have, in my view, that much economic and political power, yeah, it is time to break them up.
But isn't it too radical? Can the economy really work without the banks in which millions of Americans rely on? Isn't that
no
too
one
radical?
is talking about doing away with banking. What you're talking about is ending up a horrendous concentration of wealth and power on Wall Street.
But
Let me
finish
finish.
Bank of America, how do you divide Bank of America?
This is what we do, and this is what our legislation...
How many little banks?
This is what our legislation does. It says not that I sit here and tell you exactly what will happen, but the Secretary of Treasury will take a hard look and will determine what banks, if they failed, would require a bailout, okay? Those banks would be broken up, and I suspect these very large banks that you named would in fact be on that list. But it's not a question of destroying the American banking system, quite the contrary. It means that we want a banking system not like Wall Street, whose main goal is greed, and I would trust that you would see this movie Big Short and find out what's going on Wall Street, where they are an island unto themselves, only concerned about their profits. I want a banking system that makes affordable loans to small and medium-sized businesses so we can create jobs in this country, not a handful of banks whose only goal in life is to make as much profit for themselves as they can.
If you become president, but if Hillary becomes president, what's your greatest fear for the economy?
If what?
If Hillary Clinton becomes president, what's your greatest fear for the economy?
Well, I think, look, I have known Hillary Clinton for 25 years, and I have a lot of respect for her. But basically, what we are looking at here is an establishment politician. I think it's too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. I think we need to have the courage in this country to bring forth a political revolution when millions of people stand up and say, enough is enough. This government belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. Is that Hillary Clinton's position? Frankly, I do not think so. I believe we should break up the large banks. Hillary Clinton does not. I voted against the war in Iraq. Hillary Clinton voted for the war in Iraq. I have been very strong on trade issues. I'm sick and tired of seeing corporations in this country shut down factories, throw millions of workers out on the street, and move to other countries. I have been a leader on TPP. I didn't have to wait a whole long period of time to get on board that opposition.
Thank you so much. Akila.
Thank you, Jorge. Sorry. You want to do it.
Don't stop.
Oh, man. Senator, sorry, you guys are like raising my blood pressure. Let's talk about weed.
Do you think that would help your blood pressure?
I mean, I don't
Is this
know.
medicinal weed or?
We'll see. In states where marijuana is legal, there are men and women in jail for nonviolent weed-related offenses, while at the same time, people are selling it legally in those states. Statistically speaking, people of color are more likely to be arrested on these charges. Should these people be released from jail?
Well, let me get to the root of the issue and tell you what I'm trying to do, and it's a very good question. When we talk about criminal justice, what I am talking about is trying to end the horror of more people in America being in jail than in any other country. We got 2.2 million people in jail, spending $80 billion a year locking up our fellow Americans. This is what I have said. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I've introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Controlled Substance Act. Now, states may want to go forward to legalize marijuana, as you've indicated. 4 states have. But I do not want, and to me this is a criminal justice issue, I do not want to see a continuation of millions of people over the decades getting police records because they were caught possessing marijuana. And your point is right. Whites and blacks end up doing marijuana at about the same rate. 4 times as many blacks are arrested as whites. It is a criminal justice issue. So my own view is, from a federal perspective, decriminalize marijuana.
Thank you, Senator. Alicia?
Thanks, Keila. Senator, when you were a student activist, you outlined a case for sexual freedom in your school newspaper.
Did I? See that I was talking about this issue many years ago.
But today, the national conversation around sex on campus is very different. In fact, we now know 1 in 5 American women report an experience of sexual assault while in college. Do you believe it is the role of public institutions to combat this epidemic? And if so, how?
Absolutely it is. And you're right, it is an epidemic. And here's what I think has to happen. Rape and assault is rape or assault, whether it takes place on a campus or on a dark street. And if a student rapes a fellow student, that has got to be understood to be a very serious crime. It has got to get outside of the school and have a police investigation. And that has got to take place. Too many schools now are seeing this, well, this is a student issue, let's deal with it. I disagree with that. It is a crime, and it has to be treated as a serious crime. And you are seeing now the real horror of many women who have been assaulted or raped, sitting in a classroom alongside somebody who raped them. Rape is a very, very serious crime. Has to be prosecuted. It has to be dealt with.
So that's the law and order component of this. But before we move on, I want to ask you, there are also educational components to this. There are questions of whether or not affirmative consent is something that should be taught in America's high school and America's colleges, whether or not bystander programs should be across the board. What do you think about those ideas?
Of course I do. Again, this gets back to the previous question. about sexuality, about men respecting women, about when somebody says no, that means no. So to answer your question, I do believe, I know this is controversial, but we really do need a serious national discussion about sexuality. And this would be part of that discussion. It is a very important issue.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Senator. Brown?
Thanks. Senator, I'm going to read a list of names that unfortunately we both are familiar with. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Walter Scott, Senator Bland, some are more known than others. But we know them, and we know them for a terrible reason, violence. Do you think a level of distrust between the Black community and the police is justified at this point, based on the number of incidents that have taken place in the past 18 months?
The short answer is yes. Yeah, I do. I think, and let me just say something. All of the names that you have listed are well known. And sometimes I think young people especially think, my God, what's going on now? The truth is, this has gone on for a very, very long time.
Yes.
The only difference is we did not have cell phones to video these crimes.
Yes.
Okay. So do I think the Black community has a right to be nervous and apprehensive about the police? Absolutely. And I think we need some radical rethinking about police procedures and the relationship of police departments to minority communities. So for a start, and then just the obvious facts, is that if a police officer, like any other public official, breaks the law, i.e. kills somebody, uses lethal force when that should not have been necessary, that police officer must be held accountable, period. Number two, I have seen, as all of you have seen, these pictures on TV of local police departments, Ferguson comes to mind, where you look like you're in Iraq with an invading army. So I think we have got to work to demilitarize police departments and make police departments part of the communities, not seen as invading oppressive forces. Number three, I think we want to move to have police departments look like the communities they are serving in terms of the diversity of the community. But in terms of criminal justice, police department reform is a very important part of what we have got to do.
Just one follow-up, because I do think so much of the attention, like you're saying, with live streams and phones and videos and everything, so much of it is the violence that takes place in the streets, but there are often things that we don't see and we don't talk about. Police union contracts is something that I think is a little bit behind, more behind the scenes. In some cities, police get days to prepare before questionings. In others, they are allowed to review the evidence against them before an interview. As president, would you challenge police unions to reform their contracts to encourage more public trust?
Well, I think what we want to have are our police departments that are supported and appreciated by the communities, not seen in an antagonistic way. So any and all ways that we can do that makes sense to me. For example, when I was mayor of the city of Burlington, we worked to kind of initiate community policing, where cops were out on the street getting to know people. Kids were feeling comfortable with the police officers. That's the kind of goal that we have. So any and all ways that make people feel comfortable.
How do we do that within Burlington, wonderful place. I love Burlington. Baltimore,
It's harder, but look, there are a number of ways that we need to reform police departments. And the bottom line is, and some of that is beginning to happen, is that being a cop is a hard job. But what police officers have got to know is that you can break up disturbances, try to break up disturbances without using the kind of force that we too often see. If you're seeing a mentally ill person walking down the street with a knife, for example, you know what? There are other ways of dealing with that than shooting them.
Yes.
And we need some training on how to deal with mentally ill people. But there's a lot that we have got to do to make police departments much more part of the community.
Okay. You say that health insurance should be a right of all people.
I do.
It seems simply having insurance isn't the solution. Roughly 20% of people under the age of 65 with health insurance still say they're having problems paying their medical bills. You've said you want to break up the big banks. Do you also want to break up, I'm pointing at you a lot. Do you want to break up insurance companies?
As a matter of fact, I wouldn't talk about it that way, but let's talk about it this way. There is one country in the entire industrialized world, one, that does not guarantee health care to all people. That country is called the United States of America. There is one country in which our people pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. That country is also called the United States of America. There is one country called the U.S. where 29 million people are uninsured completely, and your point, there are millions more who are underinsured with high deductibles and copayments. That's what you're talking about, right? Okay. And yet, despite all of those failings, guess what? We end up spending far, far more per capita than do the people of any other country who guarantee comprehensive health care to all of their people. We're spending almost 3 times as much as the British, 50% more than the French. So to answer your question, what I believe is in comprehensive, universal health care for all people through a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when you do that, by the way, because you take private insurance companies out of the system, whose only function in life is to try to make as much profit as they can, when you control the cost of prescription drugs, you end up providing health care to all, comprehensive, and saving middle-class families thousands of dollars a year. That's why I believe in a Medicare for all system.
Senator, we only have a couple of minutes more with you, so we have a change of pace. Rapid-fire questions, short answers. Okay, so first question. Your father was born in Poland. Can you say something in Polish?
Unless no is a Polish word, I can't, no.
Okay, favorite fictional president?
I liked the guy in the movie The American President. I thought that was pretty cool.
Who didn't? Is it off-brand for a democratic socialist to live in a mansion like the White House?
Well, I would consider it more like public housing.
Some nice public housing.
Senator Sanders, something close to my heart today. Favorite David Bowie song?
Favorite what?
Favorite David Bowie song.
I know. He passed away, and I'm afraid I wasn't much of a follower of him. Sorry.
The answer is Heroes, in case you're wondering.
Puerto Rico has a $70 billion outstanding debt. Would you pay for it?
Well, what I would do, having met with some of the leaders of Puerto Rico, is make sure that we stand up to the Wall Street thugs who want to see schools closed down and health care diminished in Puerto Rico, and develop and negotiate a repayment schedule that is fair and not simply what Wall Street wants.
All right. All right. What's America making progress faster on, racism or sexism?
I would say sexism.
How
Okay?
much
I think in that sense, look, we have made progress in dealing with race. We have an African American who's president, but we also have seen so many terrible situations. So I would say we've made more progress in women's rights.
How much do you have to earn to be rich?
I would say that people who make $250,000 a year are doing pretty well.
What state do you think likes you the least?
Washington, D.C.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Senator Bernie Sanders, just a second.
When we return in just 2 minutes, Fusion's Democratic Candidate Forum continues here in Iowa with Governor Martin O'Malley. Stay with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Five things you didn't know about Martin O'Malley. O'Malley inspired the character Tommy Carcetti in HBO's hit show, The Wire. But in real life, O'Malley likes to do polar bear plunges for charity. In 2009, he teamed up with Baltimore Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco to benefit Special Olympics Maryland. And back in 2008, O'Malley endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. That's super sweet of him, but not so sure she'll get his vote this time around. Martin O'Malley's mother, Barbara O'Malley, isn't a stranger to politics. Known around the office as Mrs. O, she's 87, and she's been working on Capitol Hill for nearly 3 decades. Do you want some rock and roll in the White House? Because O'Malley sings and plays guitar in a Celtic rock band called O'Malley's March. Rock on, Governor.
Fusion's presentation of the Brown and Black Forum is connected by BlackBerry Priv.
We are still live here at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and this crowd just heard from Senator Bernie Sanders. He got a big round of applause. Nando, what was your favorite answer that he gave tonight?
Well, I thought it was interesting when Rembert asked him if free college tuition for all was very far-fetched, and Bernie Sanders just said, no, that happens all over the world. I mean, there's other countries that have free college tuition, and we're just one of the few that doesn't. It shows just how the Bernie Sanders effect goes beyond whether he wins or not this election.
It's true.
It changes the goalposts of the debate. It sort of moves the debate beyond the acceptable Washington consensus that's been the norm for 40 years.
Beyond the BS, you would say. And, you know, many of the people writing to me on Twitter using the hashtag DemForum were telling me that just more than the rehearsed answers, tonight they were looking for empathy here at the Brown and Black Forum, and I think that's what Bernie Sanders delivered on.
Yeah, he had a good line with the public housing line for the White House.
Exactly.
Got a good laugh from the crowd here. You know, it is hard to get these guys to deviate off script. They're professional politicians, and when they do, it's kind of it kind of perks your ears up a little bit. I think that Bernie Sanders it was interesting to try to see him square his immigration position with his support for labor unions, because often labor has been an impediment for immigration reform.
And he clearly said that he thought some of these guest worker programs were akin to slavery, and he defended his record, which I think he did really well. I want to urge you guys to stay with us on your laptops, on your phones, using the hashtag on Twitter, DemForum, also on Snapchat using the campaign 2016 story. We're going to be live with you guys here on digital, and stay tuned also for the post-forum show hosted by us. So we're going to go back to our moderators and Governor Martin O'Malley.
Can't wait.
Dear next president.
Dear next president.
Dear next president.
I sincerely hope that being the next president, that you will take part in getting established a second chance program or some type of program that will move forward to helping prisoners, convicted felons, and people who struggle like myself.
Dear next president, when you take the black female making less money than anybody else, without the black male in the household with them, that spells poverty.
Go inside the prison system and find out some of the views and some of the points that some of the inmates have.
If I've been out of trouble for 7 years, I should be able to get my felony expunged.
I have 11 felonies, been in 3 different penitentiaries. However, I am now in my master's degree, and I'm also a substance abuse counselor, which shows that reform is possible when it comes to ex-cons.
And for the past 50 years, as the black male has been systematically removed from the household, we have seen poverty-stricken black Americans.
And if ex-cons can reform, then the criminal justice system should be able to be reformed as well.
How do you propose to fix our criminal justice system that has kept the black male out of the family unit?
Welcome back to the Brown and Black Forum, live tonight here on Fusion. I'm Jorge Ramos, joined by my colleagues Aquila Hughes, Alicia Menendez, and Rembert Brown. We just heard from Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, and we're ready to continue now with our next candidate. Please join me in welcoming the former governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley.
Governor, thank you.
Governor, thank you. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you,
So you think you can be president?
I do.
Yeah.
And the history of the Iowa caucuses are such that the people of Iowa, once they're given the opportunity to have their opinion known, always have a way of upsetting the apple cart. And with only 3 of us left in this race, I'm the only one that can still upset the apple cart, Iowa.
You know, I was thinking about your party, the Democratic Party. And the party presents itself as the party of diversity. However, there's not a single Latino candidate, not a single Asian candidate, not a single African-American candidate. If you see the Republicans, they have 2 Latinos, they have an African-American candidate. So what's the problem with Democrats? You think the Democratic Party is not ready for the future?
This is what I think. In our country, we have seen such a concentration of wealth and power in the hands of the few. And that same concentration of wealth and power has also happened in the Democratic Party. We have gotten to a point where candidates come to be excluded from the stage or the debate stage before single voters even cast their vote. That's not the way our democracy is supposed to work. I believe we're strongest as a nation when more people are included more fully. So, Jorge, I can tell you this, though. If you look at our caucus in the Congress, you will see a far greater amount of diversity at the State of the Union on our side of the aisle when President Obama speaks tomorrow than you'll see on their side. So our party is the party of diversity. Our party is the party that understands our diversity as our strength. And our party, therefore, is the party of the future because America's greatest strength is our diversity.
Can I ask you about your staff? I was reading that 82% of your staff is white. Is that, BuzzFeed just reported about that. Is that true?
What, on the campaign?
Yeah, your staff.
Yeah,
working for the campaign.
Look, we have a lot of diversity in our staff. Gabby Domenzain, who's our deputy campaign manager, Corinne Jean-Pierre. I have probably the smallest staff of any of the 3 presidential candidates. And in the early going here in Iowa and New Hampshire, those are the only places I have staff. So if I have field staff here, probably in these early states, probably a majority of those field staff are white. But I can tell you, in the leadership of my campaign and in every cabinet I've ever put together, as mayor and as governor, I have had a great deal of diversity, and I have made appointments to judicial positions that were historic in every way, by race, by gender. And so, but I am running a challenger campaign. But in the leadership of this campaign, it is evident that our diversity is our strength.
Thank you, Jorge. Governor. Campus sexual assault often goes unreported because the process of reporting is confusing and can put victims at risk. Should colleges and universities be fined if they do not turn over cases to local government and law enforcement?
Wow, this is a huge challenge in our nation, and there's been a much heightened level of awareness, and some documentary filmmakers have done our country a tremendous service by elevating this. The movement of It's On Us and the way a lot of students in all our campuses are stepping up. I think we need greater openness and transparency from our campuses and from our universities. The notion that somehow you hurt the university if you're not open and transparent about this is an old and ill-serving notion. So I do believe that universities should have to report publicly, and I do believe there needs to be openness and transparency, and there should be consequences if universities don't abide by those open and transparent reporting requirements and referrals to prosecutorial authorities.
But what do you think specifically colleges and universities should do to make women feel comfortable coming forward to report these crimes?
Well, I think university presidents, and I think that the boards of regents, and I think that the students all need to come together and demand a policy on the campuses of openness and transparency, of reporting instances and actually tracking them and posting them on the internet so that all parents know, so that all students know. I've had some deep conversation. My wife and I have 4 kids, and my 2 daughters have gone to college, and I've had some conversations with them about this as well. So what I specifically believe needs to happen is that all universities need to have policies in place, and those policies need to be followed, and it needs to be posted, and the rules need to be there in terms of prosecutorial referral of these cases.
And I guess a final follow-up, what role should men play in reducing and preventing gender-based violence?
Oh, well, that goes back to the It's On Us movement. I think that I think all students, but especially our young men on our campuses, have a role to play, have to step up, have to lead by their example, and have to not be silent about these things, and have to make sure that they express to one another that this is not acceptable behavior in our country in this day and age, or any day and age.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Alicia?
Thanks, Akila. Governor, many have argued that Freddie Gray, the Baltimore man who died a week after being arrested, was failed by more than one system. In fact, he went to a high school that was 98% black and 1% white, what UCLA's Civil Rights Project calls an apartheid school. More than half of black students in Maryland attend de facto segregated schools. Governor, do you think it's fair to say that America's schools, including those in Maryland, which you call the best in America, are in a state of apartheid?
It was not I who called them the best in America. It was Education Week magazine who, for 5 years in a row, named us the best public schools in America. When I, as a governor, brought people together, unlike Governor Branstad, who cuts public education, I increased public education funding by 37%. And to the call of your question, the reason that we increased education funding to that percent was because of the historic disparity in funding between our poorer jurisdictions and our wealthier jurisdictions in terms of the adequacy of education that they were able to offer. When I ran for mayor of Baltimore in 1999, not a single one of our grades scored majority proficient in reading or math. And once we went to full-day kindergarten, once we got that better funding, we saw that first cohort of first graders, for the first time ever, score above the national average of reading and math and continue that upward movement. Every year we work to increase our graduation rates and our achievement rates for all people. In fact, more of our kids take and pass STEM-related AP courses than any other state in the union. And some of the highest rates of excellence are found among many of our African-American families and Latino families.
Just in case I wasn't clear, the spirit of the question is really about whether or not America, all these years after Brown versus the Board of Education, has actually delivered on its promise to desegregate our schools.
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I mean, many states have not actually addressed the inequitable school funding issue. Some states have. Some states you've seen a greater integration, and other states you have not. In our state, we have a lot of historically black colleges and universities, and we greatly increased by almost 40% our funding for historically black colleges and universities. So it's a different pace of improvement in every state. I think the main hurdle that all states need to overcome, though, is the inadequate funding, which often corresponds to race and to place and to class and to incomes.
All right, Governor, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. How you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good.
It's good to be back at Drake.
So, just want to talk about when you were the mayor of Baltimore. When you were there, or when you were the mayor of Baltimore, you enlisted a zero tolerance policy, meaning imposing harsh penalties for prescribed offenses without making any exceptions. Yet critics say it was this type of legislation that perpetuated deep mistrust of law enforcement in the black community. Even if your policy dramatically reduced crime, which it did, do you take any responsibility for the rift that exists between black community and the police in Baltimore currently?
I believe that all of us bear a responsibility, and in all of my service to the public, I have been on a constant search for the things that work in order to do more of them, and the things that don't work so we can stop doing them. Now, when I ran for mayor of Baltimore in 1999, there was already a deep, deep distrust between community and between police. That predated my service as mayor probably by about 250 years. So I had to work to heal that wound. And as you might imagine, briefly, when I ran in 1999, our city had allowed herself to become the most violent, addicted, and abandoned city in America. And every year for the married 300, 320, 340 young black men every year. And Black Lives Matter. So when I ran in 1999, it was on the platform that together We did not have to accept the sort of injustice where if you called the police from a wealthier neighborhood, black or white, they always came and they always got out of their car. But if you called from a poorer neighborhood, and most of them were black, they hardly ever came and they never got out of their car. So I promised to improve policing, and we did, but this is the other thing. I promised to improve how we police the police. So doing 100 reverse integrity stings a year, recruiting a much more diverse department, publicly posting our discourtesy, brutality, use of lethal force, and I drove down fatal involved police shootings to 3 of their lowest years in Baltimore history. And had I not improved the accountability and transparency with which we policed our police, I would not have been reelected 5 years later with 88% of the vote, or supported in 2 subsequent elections overwhelmingly by the very communities who saw the biggest reductions in crime and the biggest improvements of their quality of life. But we did a third thing as well, and that was to dramatically increase, I think we tripled or quadrupled the amount that we invested in drug treatment. And the number of lives we saved by reducing overdose deaths in our city were actually greater than the strides we made in reducing homicides. As governor, I accomplished something very few states ever have. I reduced our incarceration rate to 20-year lows, even as we reduced violent crime to 30-year lows. I know a lot about this issue of criminal justice reform, and I have a lot of experience to offer to our country on what we need to do. We're not done as a nation, but we have figured out things that work and don't work. And one of those things that does not work is the death penalty. And I repealed it in the state of Maryland, first governor south of the Mason-Dixon line to do so.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor Trey Porter from Grandview University has a question for you.
My name is Trey Porter, as she announced, and I attend Grandview University as a senior. Governor O'Malley, diversity is a word we hear a lot when it comes to educational institutions. But at my school, where I'm the student body president, only 4 out of 234 professors and administrators are minorities. How do we integrate the college administrations as well as the student body?
Wow. I have put forward a plan to move us to debt-free college within the next 5 years. And I also have a little bit of experience on this because I was the only governor during the recession to go 4 years in a row without a penny's increase to college tuition. But I think the deeper call of your question is this, that throughout our country, I mean, we have made great strides in bending the arc of our nation's progress towards justice, but we still have a long way to go. I mean, we tend to talk to people who are like us, to socialize with people who are like us. And I think the only answer, well, not the only answer, but a big part of the answer, Trey, is the openness and the transparency and being able to report what those diversity numbers are. In my own state, we had the highest goals for minority women and business participation of any state in the union. And during the recession, we actually exceeded it, and then we raised it. And I constantly gave voice to the truth that our diversity is our strength. The more we include people more in the economic, social, and political life of our country, the better all of us are able to do. And that's the great work that still lies before us as Americans, whether it's at our universities, whether it's at hospitals, whether it's in governments or any other institutions, or in the media.
Governor, many Democrats, you included, have criticized the Obama administration for the recent deportation rates. Do you believe that Secretary Clinton will continue the deportation policies of the Obama administration?
No, because she's not going to win the election, I am. And I believe, Jorge, Mr. Ramos, I believe that America is scanning the horizon, looking for a new leader who will move us forward. And right now, many people in America have fixated on that immigrant bashing, carnival barker, Donald Trump, and his rather fascist appeals. But once the people of Iowa have an opportunity to actually caucus and actually discuss this, I believe that they will see in the leadership that I have offered the boldest and most comprehensive immigration reform policy, and I was way in front of either of the other two candidates in this race. They're both honorable people, but we have big differences on immigration policy.
What are the biggest differences?
The biggest differences are these. Look, sometimes people say to me, are you to the left or to the right of your opponents? Actually, I'm to the forward of them. I arrive at things before they do. What are some of those? 2 years ago, when the kids were coming over the border, fleeing death gangs in Central America, and are still coming, because we need a new alliance for progress in our hemisphere that we need to be a part of. But when those kids were coming over our borders, there were many governors in our country who said, I'm going to find out where those rascals are and round them up. We took a different tactic in Maryland. Secretary Clinton said at the time, send them back. That's what she said. I, as a governor, brought together faith leaders from all over our state, and we were able to accommodate, not in detention camps, not behind chain link fence, but in foster homes, 5,000 kids, which was more per capita than any state in the union. Furthermore, I have called for an end, a long time ago, I called for an end to the shameful practice we have of these for-profit prisons. Awful public policy in the United States. And I believe that most Americans, in the course of this campaign, when they learn that our country maintains the largest system of immigrant detention camps of any developed nation in the world, they will rise up and say, this is not right.
So let me be clear. You would not deport children from the United States?
No, I believe the goal should be, I believe that the enduring symbol of our country is not the barbed wire fence. It's the Statue of Liberty. And I believe that whether refugees are coming here from Central America or Syria, it is un-American for us to slam our door in the face of families.
You would not send back
I would
Central
not.
America.
And in fact, before either of the other two candidates in this race, I called for temporary protective status for those that are coming here from Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala, the Northern Triangle countries. Look, we need to work with those countries and other countries in our own hemisphere to push back against the drug gangs and the death gangs that are threatening to make nation states fail in our own hemisphere.
But if they're listening to you right now in Central America, they might be thinking, if he becomes president, if you become president, it's an open border.
No, it's not an open border.
Because he won't deport us. That's what they might be thinking.
No.
Are you sending the wrong message?
Look, the message is this. We are a generous people, and we are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of nations, and we do not send children and women and families back to the hands of death gangs. Our policies, our mindless deportation policies, are breaking up families every single day in the United States. 72,000 parents were ripped away from their American-born kids in our country by our mindless deportation policies. Just because it's government doesn't mean there's only one speed, on or off. I guess that's two speeds. But look, our policies should be about keeping families together, yes, protecting our borders, yes, protecting public safety, but no, we need to return to our true selves and act like Americans. And Americans, whether it was in 1939, whether it's today, we should never be sending women and children back to death gangs. And so I've called for an end to these mindless deportation policies.
Vice President Joe Biden recently said in an interview that there were, quote, 2 good candidates in the race for the Democratic nomination. Meanwhile, it's been reported that you may not qualify for the upcoming debate in South Carolina. And on this very stage, for the first time since this forum started, candidates are appearing individually and not together, as per the DNC. Is the DNC the reason you've struggled to challenge Hillary Clinton's nomination?
Yes. And I heard the vice president say, I heard it reported that the vice president said that, and I wonder if he meant the other one was either Hillary or Bernie. Look, I don't make the rules. The rules are made by other people. The DNC chair, we've never had such an undemocratic debate schedule as we have this year in the Democratic Party. And then to add insult to injury, they schedule these debates on Saturday nights when as few people will see them as possible. And usually, unlike this format, which I really appreciate the fairness of this format, that great American tradition of equal time. In the other debates, they tell us ahead of time that 80% of the questions are going to the 2 front runners. And so it leads to a situation where our field of 5 was winnowed down to just 3 after the very first debate. And so I don't make these rules, but I offer my candidacy, and this is what I believe. I believe that the people of Iowa have a way of sorting through things. And if my gut is right, if we are looking for a new leader who can get things done and move us forward out of these rather gridlocked and divided and self-defeating times in our country, I believe we're going to surprise a lot of people on caucus night. And that would put me in the company of other candidates who surprised on caucus night, who are in the same place in single digits in the polls in December as I was. Well, actually, we rose to double digit right before Christmas. My wife asked me at Christmas time, what would you like for Christmas? I said, 2 more points in an Iowa poll, please. I mean, people like John Kerry, people like Jimmy Carter, people like Gary Hart. The Iowa way is that the people of Iowa, in this state, the individuals matter.
Sure. But how do you think you're going to do in Iowa in the general election or even in the primaries?
I think I'm going to surprise a lot of people in Iowa. We have a terrific staff here. I have now visited, I think, 65 counties in Iowa, and we have a great organization here. And what I hear all across Iowa are the 2 phrases, new leadership and getting things done. I'm the only one of the 3 of us who actually has, I'm not a former member of Congress, not a former cabinet secretary. I've been a mayor, I've been a governor. I have brought people together around deep divides, whether in my city, divides of race and class and place, or as a governor, to make our schools #1 in America, to have not only the highest median income all through the recession, but the 2nd highest median income for African-American families. So I have a record of practicing not only the politics, but the economics of inclusion, and I have a record of getting results. And I believe that that's what our country needs right now.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Alicia?
Thanks, Akilah. Governor, we've talked about for-profit prisons. Let's talk about for-profit colleges. The industry has been criticized for taking advantage of veterans and minorities by charging inflated fees for degrees that, as the New York Times put it, mostly fails to deliver promised skills and jobs. Yet, the Department of Education continues to hand over tens of millions of dollars to those same institutions who have been accused of predatory behavior. Will you cut federal funding, such as Pell Grants, for these for-profit institutions?
Yeah, a lot of the worst offenders have been weeded out of the system. I do believe that we need greater accountability on our dollars here. My debt-free college plan covers not only tuition, but it also covers room and board, which is oftentimes a big chunk of what it takes to go to college. But I also believe that there's some great examples out there of online universities, many of them public online universities, that actually work and create more flexible pathways for students to be able to finish their degrees to move forward when they're ready. And I don't believe that we should stifle that, but I do believe that we need to lift up those schools that actually work. University of Maryland University College, I think, is the largest public online university in our country. University of Southern New Hampshire. We need a more blended way to achieve degree attainment. Rather than putting the institutions at the center, we need to put degree completion at the center. And I think we need to be open to online universities and other multiple pathways to allow people to do that.
But going back to this question of for-profit, for the bad actors that continue to exist, that are dabbling in predatory behavior, should they be able to receive federal funds?
No, they should not.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
They should not.
Governor, so I'd say one thing my generation knows very little about is Social Security. With that said, 1 in 4 millennials doesn't expect to receive any Social Security benefits in retirement, almost as if we've accepted the fact that we're putting money into something we know we won't be compensated for down the road. Do you think that fear is justified?
I think it's understandable when you see this Republican Congress shutting down our very government every 3 months. It's easy to become discouraged about the state of our national politics. In fact, you know what the most recurrent question I get all across Iowa and New Hampshire and all the early states, South Carolina? The most recurrent question I get is, what are you going to do to bridge the divide in Washington? We've become so despondent about our own ability to govern ourselves. Having said that, I believe that Social Security is one of the strongest and best and most effective programs we have ever created as a nation. And I put forward a plan to actually expand Social Security, create a caregiver credit within it so we're not disproportionately penalizing women who more often than men drop out of the workforce to raise family or to care for someone. And I believe that the way to pay for this is by having people who earn more than $250,000 start to pay back in. Right now, there's a cap at about $118,000. So I put forward this plan, and what I would say to millennials including my own kids, is that no people ever gave their children and grandchildren a life with more opportunity and more security by making their country weaker. So we're going to come through this divided time with new leadership and a faith in one another. And as we do that, we're also going to strengthen Social Security. We're going to make college debt-free in the United States of America again. And we're going to square our shoulders to the challenge of climate change and make it the greatest business opportunity to come to the United States in 100 years. This is what we do. We are a great people. And those are the things that I'm running to accomplish.
Great. So when I turn 65, I'm going to get more than a $100 check. You say.
Yes, you will.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Lisa.
All right, Governor, I have a question for you on the unemployment rate, if I can find it. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Unemployment among Black Americans remains higher than the overall rate at the peak of the recession. Now, many economists are saying that another economic downturn is on its way, and it could occur in what would be your first term in office. Would you support a second stimulus for those Americans who've been left behind?
Yes, I absolutely would. In fact, I believe that that we went as a party too weak on the first stimulus. And I was advocating at the time with the national governor, or rather with the Democratic governors, that the stimulus needed to have more long-term investments in it. I'm the only candidate in either party to put forward a plan, a new agenda for America's cities. America's cities and towns are the places where we have the greatest problem with structural unemployment, and yet it's also the place where the greatest amount of work needs to be done. My plan has 3 components. One is much more robust investments in transportation and mobility, because upward economic mobility, one of the greatest barriers to that is a lack of mobility itself. The second part of it is doubling the investment in workforce and affordable housing so that our cities can be places that are economically inclusive for people across the spectrum of earning. And the third piece is to make our cities the leading edge in this movement to a 100% clean electric grid by 2050. With the redesign of buildings, the retrofits, and the things that can happen in cities. So I propose doubling CDBG investments so that mayors can get our people back to work. I'm proposing a green jobs corps so that we can get our people back to work. And these are the things that we've done in other eras, and I believe that we need to do it now. Structural unemployment, the widening opportunity gap, this isn't going to solve itself. We need to solve it, and we have the ability to do that.
Great, thank you, Governor.
So let's mix things up a little bit. So here's rapid fire, short questions, short answers.
Oh, golly, the rapid fire, okay.
All right, ready? The most difficult one. Do you think El Chapo will escape again?
No. No, and I'm glad he's been apprehended.
All right. On the campaign trail, you commonly use the phrase, "We're all in this together." Tell me, are you a High School Musical fan?
Was that something in High School Musical?
We're all in this together. You know, it's a song. It's like the main song. It's cool.
I'm going to be 53 next week, and once you get over 50, you got to work to stay connected to the current. We're all in this together. That's something. The great Frederick Douglass once said in one of the most beautiful summations of who we are as a people. He was not in High School Musical. He said, "We are one, our cause is one, and we must help each other if we are to succeed." So that's just kind of been a touchstone of mine.
Here's one you'll know for sure. Describe to me in one sentence the American dream.
The American dream is that in our country, you start where you start, but through your own hard work, you should be able to get ahead and give your children a better future, a future with more security, more safety, more health, more prosperity.
This was going to be a longer question, but now I moved it to rapid fire because it's a yes or no question. In what scenario, if any, should a man ever be able to tell a woman what to do with her body?
No scenario.
Great.
There we go.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Great.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for your kindness.
Just sit just for a moment.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Tonight, Hillary Clinton joins the stage here live from Iowa.
Thanks a lot for the equal time. This is the first debate with equal time.
5 things you didn't know about Hillary Clinton. When Donald Trump tied the knot back in 2005, Hillary Clinton was there as one of the wedding guests. She defended her decision to attend, saying she, quote, didn't know him that well and thought it would be fun. Back in college, Hillary was president of the Young Republicans Club. That's right, Hillary Clinton was a Republican. Even though she graduated from Yale Law, Clinton didn't pass the bar exam in Washington, D.C. No worries, though. She passed in Arkansas and went on to practice law there. As a child, she wrote to NASA, but they didn't accept female astronauts. Not cool, NASA. Not cool. She is a Grammy winner, though. In 1997, she won Best Spoken Word Album for her audiobook, It Takes a Village. Bravo, Hillary.
Fusion's presentation of the Brown and Black Forum is connected by BlackBerry Priv.
Mariana and Nando here for our digital YouTube audience. We're still live from Drake University in Des Moines. And we just heard from Governor Martin O'Malley.
Yep.
And he had an interesting mention about the way these Democratic debates are working out and how this forum is actually different in format, right?
Yeah, it's just the DNC has clearly been shy about letting their candidates speak in front of millions of Americans. And I don't quite understand why.
Scheduling the debates on Saturday nights.
It makes it very, very difficult for people to watch. And I think it's a very, very bad move from the DNC because I think the debates are actually a good advertisement for their candidates and they could play well in the general election coming down the road.
And to toot our own horn, O'Malley did say that this forum, the Brown and Black Forum, was one of the fairest kind of platforms he's seen, right?
Well, if Martin O'Malley says it, it must be high praise.
It must be true.
Yeah.
I was actually at a Sanders event on Saturday night, and one young girl told me, you know, for young people, it's easy to go on the internet and look up Sanders policies, but for my parents who are accustomed to just watching these debates on TV, or if not, they don't find out about a candidate at all, it's much harder to really get to know people like O'Malley and Sanders.
And that obviously benefits Hillary Clinton, who has the most name recognition out of any of the candidates.
Exactly.
So.
And that's who we're going to be hearing from next, Secretary Clinton.
The big heavy hitter.
Do you want to
the main event.
Do you want to give her sort of a welcome?
Hillary, I hope you do okay. Jorge Ramos is a scary man, I know, but you'll be fine. He won't bite too hard.
So guys, please join in on the conversation. Join using the hashtag DemForum on Snapchat and join us for our post-forum live show right here from Drake University.
Dear next president, I want you to know me. I am an ordinary U.S. citizen and the first generation of immigrant. I raised 2 U.S.-born citizens for this country, so I have opinions, and you should listen to ordinary people just like me.
The American dream is for immigrants and refugees just as much as for Americans who have been here for generations. Don't let fear run this country.
Dear next president, end Islamophobia.
Dear next president, I would like for you to please handle the immigration problem that we are facing right now.
We are here because we love this country just as much as you do. So don't separate us because we're from China or from other part of the world. Look at us as one of your team. Okay, that's all.
Next president. Dear next
president.
Dear next president.
Dear next president, if we fix education, we fix almost all the problems in the United States.
Dear next president, give us free education. Querido futuro presidente, educación bilingüe es importante para todos los estudiantes en los Estados Unidos.
We cannot afford to reduce teachers' pay.
Dear next president, fight for education.
Please make more opportunities for students to complete their education through alternative programs.
Dear next president, please continue to ensure that private college is an affordable option for students from all socioeconomic backgrounds.
Please consider more loan forgiveness programs for college graduates.
I'm currently a victim of high interest student loans.
Do something about the student loan debt. Dear next president, please make college more affordable for low-income families.
I mean, you start a GoFundMe account for me and help me pay down my student loans, or you can just decrease tuition costs.
Dear next president.
Dear next
President. Dear next president.
I hope you're ready to be radical. I hope you're ready to stand up for the millions of voices constantly silenced by American politics.
Dear next president, I would like to know what you're going to do to make sure that when I have a family, we're still the economic world power.
I want you to work on problems in America.
We need more jobs. Make a change with the working class. Make that mean something again.
Instead of focusing on just what you can do for people who have money, focus on people who don't have the money.
Have the government work for the people and not the top 1%.
Please help end this political correctness that inhibits our ability to have intellectual debates and have conversations that actually matter.
I would like the Congress to get together and be able to vote and make a difference.
Really reach out to the people.
Dear next president, please be a leader for bipartisanship, because if I wanted to study tattletaling and bickering, I wouldn't be a political science major.
Remember that we are your future.
I'm willing to do anything I can do to help out. I want you to change the world.
Dear next president, make sure when you reach the podium, hit the dab.
It's been an incredible night here at Drake University. We have covered a lot of ground and we are hardly finished. Please welcome to the stage former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
Thank you so much for coming. Secretary, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for doing this. I guess the Republicans will be next.
You know, we invited them. If they want to come, we're ready to ask them questions.
Good,
Right?
good. Send the word out.
You know, I did this many months ago, but I want to disclose again that my daughter, Paola, works for your campaign.
Yes, she does.
In the spirit of full transparency.
Thank you.
All right. The last
And
time,
she's wonderful.
the last time we talked, I asked you if you had a Latino problem, and you said you hope not. And now many Latinos want to know if you're going to be the next deporter-in-chief. Many Latinos are concerned that you were against driver licenses in New York State. And in 2014, you said that you would send back some Central American children. And also, we haven't heard you publicly, personally, opposing the deportation rates conducted by the Obama administration. As you know, President Barack Obama has deported more than 2 million immigrants. So will you become the next deporter-in-chief?
No. No, and I have come out against the raids. I do not think the raids are an appropriate tool to enforce the immigration laws. In fact, I think they are divisive. They are sowing discord and fear. And I also have come out in favor of guaranteeing that unaccompanied children have government-sponsored counsel so that as they go through the process, they will not be lost in the process, confused by the process, and will have a chance to tell their story. It is important to put this in the broader context, which is what I've tried to do. We have to have comprehensive immigration reform, but how we implement our immigration laws does have some ability for the executive to make choices. And I would prioritize criminals, people who are plotting or planning or taking action that is against our public safety or our property. Those are the kinds of people that would be on my list.
But that's not what the Obama administration is doing right now. So maybe the question is, can you promise that you won't deport children? And can you promise that you won't deport immigrants who don't have a criminal record?
Here's what I can promise, Jorge. I can promise that I will do everything possible to provide due process. We have to change the immigration, asylum, and refugee laws. And right now, until we do, we have to try to figure out how to handle this very large group of predominantly women and children who are coming north. So we have to be sensitive and humane in the application of our laws. And we also have to do a lot more, and this is where I think I have a particular passion. We have to do a lot more to help those countries in Central America get over some of the challenges of violence, criminality, drug cartels. That is really the impetus behind it, because you know that this year we had no net immigration from Mexico.
That's true.
And in fact, Mexicans in America are actually going back to Mexico. Now, why is that? Because there is, despite all the problems, as we still know exist, there is better economic opportunity, there is better stability for families. And similarly, I recall very well the good help that America gave to the Colombian people to overcome their decades of civil war and the horrendous behavior of the drug cartels. So now Colombia is doing better. We need to focus in particular on Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador.
But would you deport children?
Let me say this. I would give every person, but particularly children, due process to have their story told. And a lot of children will, of course, have very legitimate stories under our law to be able to stay. And I would certainly, I'm going to end private detention centers. I'm going to end family detention, both of which I think are not in keeping with our values as Americans. I cannot sit here and tell you I have a blanket rule about who or who won't ever be let into the country to stay, because it has to be done individually by individually. What I don't like are the mass roundups and the raids that just pick people up and send them off in the middle of the night, and that should end.
Aquino.
Thank you, Secretary. All of the Democratic presidential candidates have said that Black Lives Matter, even if they didn't at first. But how will your administration specifically prove that?
You know, it's a really important question that I've done a lot of thinking about, and I've met, as you probably know, with a very dynamic group of young Black Lives Matter activists, and have heard directly from them. And there's a broad agenda that we've got to address. Let's start with the most contentious issues: criminal justice reform, policing reform, incarceration reform. And I believe strongly that this has to be the highest priority of the president. President Obama's Policing Commission has some very good suggestions that I would want to build on. But we have to do everything possible in reaching out and listening directly to communities that are being affected, whose trust has been betrayed and broken, whose families are desolated by the large numbers of missing men in the communities. And I have a very specific set of recommendations about what I would do. When it comes to arrest, we've got to have a much clearer set of standards, because African-American men and Latino men in particular get arrested more quickly for doing the same thing as a white man does. And then it continues through the process. More likely to be charged, more likely to be convicted, more likely to be incarcerated. And the figures don't lie. We know what they are, but we have to bring those to a broader audience, because it is such a violation of what we say our values are. You know, equal before the law. Well, we have systemic racism and bias that is implicit in our system. And unless we begin to go after that and expose it and end it, we won't solve this problem. But in addition to the really difficult, painful pieces of reform needed in criminal justice and incarceration, and we've got to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. We need a cradle to college pipeline. We need more job opportunities. I want to incentivize more investment in the most disinvested communities in our country: inner cities, poor rural areas, Native American reservations. We have some places where the poverty is so appalling. It's such a rebuke to who we say we are and what we say we stand for. So it's not just dealing with the criminal justice issue, because I want to end the incarceration of people for low-level offenses, for nonviolent offenses. I want to divert them from the criminal justice system. We need far more opportunities for people to stay out of jail or prison while they, deal with, let's say a drug problem or a mental health problem, which is one of the main reasons people end up in jail and prison. And when you look at it, it's not only wrong and dehumanizing, it doesn't make economic sense. If you have a system where we should have, treatment recovery programs across America so that when somebody is in and out of the jail or the emergency room because of alcohol or because of drugs, they get a chance to go into a different kind of setting than a jail. And I've seen those. I saw a great example in Reno, Nevada, started by the Sheriff's Office and Catholic Charities. And what I want is to make the case it's the right thing to do. But it's also a lot cheaper. So if I can't get to you because it's the humanitarian, moral thing to do, it costs $3,000 to divert somebody. It costs $30,000 to put them in jail or prison. Now, you make the choice, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, you've been endorsed by NARAL and by Planned Parenthood. And just yesterday, you told an audience, quote, any right that requires you to take measures to access it is no right at all. Not as long as we have laws in the books like the Hyde Amendment making it harder for low-income women to exercise their full rights. Does that mean that you would support congressional repeal of the Hyde Amendment, which limits federal funding for abortion?
Yes, and actually I have for a very long time. And it is just hard to justify because if we have a right, and I think people have a right to health, we're working on trying to make that real in people's lives, but certainly the full range of reproductive health rights that women should have includes access to safe and legal abortion. But if state governments, if politicians use their power to try to restrict that right, well-off people are still going to have it. We know that. But a lot of poor women, rural women, isolated, far from a place where they can get services, are going to be denied. That's why this case that's going to the Supreme Court out of Texas is so important, because the Texas government has forced the closing of Planned Parenthood clinics on totally inaccurate medical requirements. And this is a huge state, and it's going to be much more difficult for poor women to exercise that right. So, yeah, I think we should do everything we can to repeal the Hyde Amendment. I think it's been a blockade.
I have a quick follow-up for you on that. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, also the chairwoman of the DNC, recently said that she believes the generation of women who grew up after Roe v. Wade was decided have become complacent. Do you agree that Akilah and my generation of women are complacent?
I don't have any overall data or information to respond to that. You two certainly aren't, so I don't want to draw generalizations. But I think it's always important for people to be reminded of some of the struggles that went before, whether it's civil rights or human rights or women's rights or gay rights or whatever it might be. I think what's happening is that because of some of the actions that are going on in states and because of this Supreme Court decision, this is in the news now. So anybody who might have thought, well, this is settled, this is ancient history, is realizing that no, maybe it isn't. And it's important to do what we can to raise the visibility of these issues and to demonstrate the important connections that they have with people's lives, whether or not you ever exercise that right. It is something that should be available. And I feel especially passionate about this because I've traveled to so many countries. I've been in a hospital in northeastern Brazil where the doctors told me, half the women are so happy they've just had a baby. Half the women are here because of botched abortions. I went to Romania, where the prior communist dictatorship actually legally required every woman to have 5 children. And the secret police would follow to make sure that you weren't trying to do anything, even birth control, to prevent that. And what was the result? Thousands of abandoned babies, orphanages filled with little kids, and terrible consequences. And of course, I went and spoke in Beijing in 1995 against forced sterilization. So to me, reproductive rights are a fundamental human right. No government should interfere. They should not tell a woman what she can do with her life and her body. And we have to stand up against this movement that is currently being pushed across our country to prevent that right.
Good evening, Madam Secretary. The danger of ISIS is clearly a major threat to American safety, but personally, I know many minorities who are much more concerned with racist attacks at the local level than radical Islamists. So just a question to put it plainly, since often issues of race are tiptoed. Do you believe that white terrorism and extremism is as much a threat to some in this country as something like ISIS?
You know, I think that we have all kinds of threats in our country, and I wouldn't discount any of them. I think we have to take them all seriously. And many of those threats are fueled by the gun violence that we face every single day, where 90 Americans are killed by guns, homicide, suicide, tragic avoidable accidents. So one of the reasons why I'm so adamant and so much in support of President Obama's policies that he's rolled out is I just think as a nation we cannot sit idly by while 33,000 people a year die from gun violence. I also believe that we have to take any form of violence, and particularly organized violence, seriously. So yes, I believe there are all kinds of underground movements and efforts in our country to try to use violence or assert certain beliefs that I find often lead to violence. So let's take you know, some of the white extremism that we see. You know, I remember very well going to Oklahoma City and seeing the ruins of the federal building where, as I recall, 168 Americans, including 19 children, were murdered by a bomb, by a guy who hated the government. That's terrorism as far as I'm concerned. I also think when you have communities terrorized by gangs so that parents are afraid to send their kids out, afraid to go out after school. I remember that beautiful young woman, Hadia Pendleton from Chicago. She performed at President Obama's second inauguration, came home, hanging out with her friends across from her school in Chicago, gets murdered. Stray bullet, intentional bullet, fact is, murdered. I think that when you have police violence that terrorizes communities, that doesn't show the respect that you're supposed to have from protecting people in your authority, that can feel also terrorizing. So there are so many different kinds of potential violent acts, and we have to go after all of them. We have to stop them all. We cannot let anybody live in fear. And it becomes higher profile when it's tied to international terrorism, because that seems like it's coming from the outside and it's, you know, not homegrown. Well, I saw homegrown terrorism in Oklahoma City, and I saw foreign terrorism in New York City, and I saw people grieving over the loss of their loved ones. And at some point, we all have to come together as a country again and stand against violence and do something to get the guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, no matter who they are.
Secretary, let me introduce Talia from Drake University. She has our final question from the audience.
Hello.
Hello.
As Alicia mentioned, my name is Talia Angueto, and I'm a junior here at Drake University, and my question is for you, and it is the following. White privilege is a term that more people are talking openly about these days. Certainly, people like me have long understood what it means. Secretary Clinton, can you tell us what the term white privilege means to you? And can you give me an example from your life or career when you think you have benefited from it?
Well, look, I mean, where do I start? I think it is hard when you're swimming in the ocean to know exactly what's happening around you so much as it is when you're standing on the shore, perhaps watching. For me, you know, look, I was born white, middle class, in the middle of America. I went to good public schools. I had a very strong, supportive family. I had a lot of great experiences growing up. I went to a wonderful college. I went to law school. I never really knew what was or wasn't part of the privilege. I just knew that I was a lucky person, and that being lucky was in part related to who I am, where I'm from, and the opportunities I had. But I'll tell you, when I first realized that I was privileged, both because I was white and because I was economically stable, I had two experiences. The first, and they both came through my church. The first, when I was about 11 years old, our church asked if some of us would volunteer to babysit for the children of migrant workers on Saturdays, because the families had to go into the fields and the older kids had to go with them. And there was nobody left to watch the little kids. And I and a couple of my friends volunteered. And I remember, you know, in those days, Chicago was surrounded by fields. Doesn't look like it anymore, but it was. And it was on the migrant journey from Mexico up through Texas, up through the Midwest, ended up in Michigan. But at a certain point in the summer harvest, folks were in the Chicago area. So I remember going out there, taking care of these adorable little kids. And I kind of thought, well, you know, they're very different from me. I mean, they've got different experiences, but they were just little kids. And then at the end of the day, at the end of this long road, because there are all these sort of housing units, at the end of this long road, the bus stopped, and the parents and the older brothers and sisters got out. And when the little kids saw them, they just dropped everything and began running for their mothers and their fathers, holding their arms out. And I remember it like it was yesterday, watching that, and I was thinking, I used to do that with my father. And I'm watching these kids and their families, they have to work so hard. And the place they live is not very nice. And I just felt, you know, I have a different kind of life. I didn't call it a particular name, but it was a different life, and I knew that.
Secretary Clinton, we have a few more questions.
Yes.
All right, let me jump to another question. President Bill Clinton, in 1994, with Operation Gatekeeper, built new fences at the border with Mexico. Last November, you said the following, and I quote, "I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in." So, first question, would you commit right now not to use the word illegal or illegals to refer to undocumented immigrants?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, yeah, that was a poor choice of words, and obviously, historically and mostly have used undocumented. I haven't used it since. I won't use it in the future.
Okay, now, if you believe in building a wall, what's the difference between your idea and Donald Trump's idea on building a wall with Mexico?
Well, I think that everybody that I know of in the Democratic Party, and it used to be Republicans too, as you know, Jorge, who favored immigration reform also favored border security. And, you know, that's Ted Kennedy, it's obviously my husband, President Obama, myself, even, you know, somebody like President George W. Bush, who we forget was trying very hard to push immigration reform and gave up, I think, too easily. So, yeah, we do need to have secure borders. And what that will take is a combination of technology and physical barriers.
But you want a wall then?
No, we've already...
You said that.
Well, I voted for border security, and some of it was a fence. I don't think we ever called it a wall. Maybe in some places it was a wall. But it was aimed at controlling our borders. And I think we have to get comprehensive immigration reform with a path to full citizenship. But I also think we need to keep our borders secure. I don't see a contradiction there. What I object to about what the Republicans are saying is that they always combine, or at least the person you're referring to, he always combines
Donald Trump
building the wall and deporting 11 or 12 million people so that they're on the other side of the wall. Now, that to me is not only foolish, it's offensive. And so part of the challenge is, yes, we need border security, and at the same time, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have to do both.
All right. Alicia?
You know, every year, millions of Americans forgo a paycheck in order to care for a loved one, and access to paid family leave is especially low among minorities. Democrats have introduced a plan that Senator Sanders supports, but you've come out against because it is funded by a payroll tax. If that were to reach your desk as president, would you veto it in order to make good on your tax pledge?
No, but here's what, I don't in any way oppose the plan. I remember being here for the debate, and my good friend, Senator Gillibrand, who introduced the bill in the Senate, was there, and I really applauded her because I'm absolutely for the substance of it. The substance being, 12 weeks of paid leave, 7 days of paid sick leave. I'm absolutely for that. But I do think we've got to stabilize Social Security, and that's going to take some real effort. So I have the same plan, but paid for by closing loopholes and raising taxes on the wealthy. So I think my plan is a better approach to get to the same objective. And I do think that we've got to deal with numerous problems simultaneously, and therefore, until we stabilize Social Security and make sure it will be there and the promise will be fulfilled, I don't want to do anything with the payroll tax.
Well, because to this point, when you talk about how you're going to pay for this program, the Sanders campaign has criticized the, quote, vagueness of the way in which you would pay for it. Can you give us any more details? Can you give us a price tag?
Well, that's interesting because I have laid out specifically my tax plans, and my friend Senator Sanders has said that he will lay out his before the Iowa caucus, and I and others will be anxious to see them. I have said, number one, and I have capped deductions at 28% with the exception of charitable contributions, closing loopholes like the carried interest loophole that hedge fund managers use to pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries do, the Buffett rule, a 30% tax on everybody making $1 million or more, and then what I call a fair share surcharge of a 4% surcharge on incomes over $5 million. Because we are so out of whack right now. And the reason I've said I don't want to raise middle-class taxes is most middle-class families haven't recovered from the Great Recession. They haven't recovered from their wages not going up. They oftentimes are working 2 jobs now instead of 1 job. Their family wealth has not recovered. They maybe lost a home, and now they're renting because they can't get back into the home market. So I think I have a very clear plan that I've outlined about where the money will come from to provide paid leave, which is a high priority of mine.
Secretary Clinton, we have just a couple of minutes with you, so short questions, short answers. Okay?
Oh, well, or
right.
we can just hang around.
All right.
Either one.
So, how many email accounts do you have?
I have 1.
All right.
Who had a better 2015, you or Drake?
Oh my gosh. Well, he's talented. That's not fair.
Your campaign released a list, 7 ways Hillary Clinton is like your abuela, 7 ways Hillary Clinton is like your grandmother. Can you name one way in which you are not?
Well, I'm obviously running for president. Not every grandmother does that. Yeah, that's a little bit of a difference.
That Republican that you said we don't speak of, Donald something. What did you get him for his wedding?
Nothing. Nothing. I'm very. He was basically a Democrat before he was a Republican, and he was. Somebody that we all knew in New York, and he was supportive of Democrats. He was supportive of a lot of the causes that I cared about and that people I knew cared about. And so, now he seems to have taken another road.
Secretary Clinton, is Bill Clinton fair game in this campaign?
Oh, look, people can say whatever they want about us. We understand that if you don't have anything positive to say about what you'll do to help people's lives, then, you're going to resort to personal attacks, but that's not something we're going to engage in, and we're not going to, try to respond. We're just going to let people run their campaigns any way they want. I'm going to run on what I think will help our country and improve people's lives, and I'll let the voters decide.
All right, tell us the truth. Do you hate selfies?
I don't hate them. But here's the problem. Number one, I really would like to talk to people, but all I do is take a selfie. And I feel like I'm missing something. And number two, I once had a selfie with Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
And she had one of those devices that you put onto your case that lit it up all the way around. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah, the good lighting.
Yeah, you have one? No, well. I will tell you, you can't take a bad picture with it.
Yeah.
But most of the selfies, and I'm now, when people ask for a selfie and I'll say, okay, and I take it and I hold it and we do it. But they hardly ever are as good as Kim Kardashian. So I feel kind of like, hey, what's the point?
That's
right?
an impossible standard. Best rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
Oh, the best rumor. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Where do I start? My favorite. When I was in the White House, one of the tabloids published this amazing picture. It was my head, and I was wearing something that I actually own. Sometimes I know that it's not my body because they put my head on somebody else's clothes, but this one was my clothes. And I had, and there were arms coming around, and the headline was Hillary's secret alien baby. And the little alien was right there. I mean, it was really quite cute. It was sort of E.T.-ish.
Final rapid fire. Do you think 2016 is the year, kind of on the federal level, we should start studying reparations?
I think we should start studying what investments we need to make in communities to help individuals and families and communities move forward. And I am absolutely committed to that. There's some good ideas out there. There's an idea in the Congressional Black Caucus about really targeting federal dollars to communities that have had either disinvestment or no investment and have had years of being below the poverty level. That's the kind of thing I'd like us to focus on and really help lift people up.
And one final question. Can you say categorically tonight that Senator Bernie Sanders cannot win the presidency?
Anybody can win. I mean, this is such, who would have thought Donald Trump would be leading in national polls? I mean, for those of you who ever thought about running for president, take heart. I mean...
Secretary Clinton, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We'll wrap things up live from Des Moines and Fusion's Brown and Black Forum in just a moment. Stay with us.
This was so, you guys need to do this again.
Fusion's presentation of the Brown and Black Forum is connected by BlackBerry Priv.
Hey guys, don't go anywhere. If you're watching the Brown and Black Presidential Forum on your laptop, on your phone, Nando and myself will still be here with you. We have a great post-forum show.
Yep.
And we just heard from Secretary Clinton. What did you think, Nando?
Oh, well, it was interesting. She sharply criticized the President Obama, her former boss, for the raids on undocumented immigrants. She says that she would stop that as president. She didn't quite go as far enough to detail a detailed plan about Central American refugees, but she did deviate from the president on that point.
She mentioned that she was against the raids and the deportations that are going on now. She also mentioned that she wanted to tackle the root causes of the migration in Central America, compared the experience to the aid that was given to Colombia in the 80s and 90s. But I think that she didn't really, at least in this forum, I didn't get the impression that she detailed a concrete plan to tackle the Central American refugee problem. On the other hand, I'm checking in on my email, and her campaign did send out a statement detailing that plan. So I guess the written statement was more concise than what she said in this forum.
Yeah, she also said she was a fan of Drake.
Well, there you go.
She said she was very talented. Also, epic humble brag on that Kim Kardashian comment.
And also, you know, I just love the fact that in this forum, somebody has the freedom to ask her about white privilege. Where else would you kind of hear that in other
That was an
presidential
excellent
debates?
question from the student. It brought the House down. Everyone started clapping,
Everybody started clapping
and whooping.
here, yes.
And Hillary's answer was long, thoughtful, and you can tell that she was trying to reckon with it, but she was struggling with it.
Okay, so stick around for the post show. Interesting discussion going on now. So stick with us, okay?
Welcome back. There's just time for us to say thanks to all the candidates for taking part in the Brown and Black Forum presented by Fusion. A warm thank you to my co-moderators, Aquila Hughes, Rembert Brown, and of course, Jorge Ramos.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And the four of us would like to express our appreciation to Drake University for hosting and for the Brown and Black Forum for inviting us to broadcast tonight's event. We're not done just yet. Jump over to fusion.net and Facebook for live reaction from us here on stage, and you at home on what the candidates had to say tonight. On behalf of all of us at Fusion, thank you for watching, and good night.
Can you see? Dear next president. Dear next president. Dear next president. Dear next president.
Querido futuro presidente.
And leader of the land of the free.
Dear next president, I'm Latina, I'm a mom, and I'm a teacher making a difference in the world. How will you make a difference in the world?
Dear next president, help us keep families together and protect religious freedom.
Dear next president, I'd like for you to expand DACA and DAPA to keep families like mine together.
Lower the price of food and clothes. Also, can you please not deport my family?
Red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
Dear next president, fix our laws so that discrimination does not take part in the lives of minorities. Minorities are just as equal as anyone else.
Por favor, tomen en consideraciones nuestras voces.
Si se puede have our voices heard, I just hope that you can listen to us, the